So, hello everyone. My name is Brooks Patrick. I work here on the 3D team at Esri in the Redlands office. Today's topic is all about the application of 3D GIS for comprehensive planning. The comprehensive plan represents a value-driven planning process supported by strong community input, informed by existing conditions and trends analysis. Really the communicating of the existing conditions and trends and gathering public support for this shared community vision is the future for that community and is the key objective for any planning staff embarking on this multi-year effort. So we found that large citywide and even countywide 3D models can support this work. And to help articulate this further, we've invited two amazing guests from the City of Boulder, as well as Brady from Bergman Associates, to show you some of their amazing work. So we have comprehensive plans to address some really major challenges and guide decisions about growth, development priorities, preservation, environmental protection, culture and the arts, urban design, neighborhood character, transportation, you name it. It's really encapsulating all of the challenges as well as opportunities within our local communities. And while there are many standards and best practices for comprehensive plans, such as the APA's Sustaining Places Initiative, a long-range plan typically follows a planning process that includes steps such as identifying issues, analyzing data, reviewing the plan and soliciting community input throughout the entire process, creating implementation plans and alternatives, adopting the plan and implementing and finally monitoring that plan. And there are challenges to this process. The first key challenge is delivery. For years, comprehensive plans, whether they're produced by municipalities, regional organizations, or other entities, have had a pretty much standard format. They're placed in a 3-ring binder that sits on a shelf. And usually an identical PDF will usually get hosted on a government website. And really speaking to you here as a millennial, I'm not going to be reading this anytime soon during my leisure time. So today, for better or for worse, that's still the standard, but in a few places, planners are taking a different approach. The next challenge is successful community involvement. These are the typical images that come to mind when I say that. Either you have huge interest, too much for one room to fit, or you have a few individuals with the most to say show up to the meeting. And we need to be able to meet their needs, but how do we reach the rest of the population, not just those folks who need to vent frustration? Today, many cities are still reaching out with paper when today's social interaction of choice is through the web. So how to begin? Firstly, we have to overcome the biggest challenge of all, and that's muscle memory. Planners shouldn't be afraid to do some experimentation, and we need to recognize that changing public expectation is on its way and fully leverage the power of the web. So hundreds of planning organizations have already transformed how they work. At Esri, we're building tools that leverage web GIS for planning and community engagement. Cities and regional organizations are using web GIS and 3D to do zoning, development capacity planning, master planning, development review, just to name a few. 3D is really improving the methods of communication and supporting better informed decisions by sharing ideas more effectively, by, in essence, telling a story. So fundamental to changing the way we think about cities during a comprehensive planning process is a reimagining of the way we abstract them. Maps are abstractions of geography, and they've proved to be particularly useful throughout history. But traditional maps have a limit on our ability to manage and design in a holistic, comprehensive manner. 3D GIS has given us a powerful new context for extending our traditional methods. And we see the need for actionable 3D city models that include everything that lies below, on, above, around the city, and also includes what exists inside and outside buildings, as well as how things connect throughout the city and how the city changes through time. And the future of the comprehensive plan will be data hungry. How do we start to work with this data and format environmental economic constraints, but furthermore, how do we start to visualize and communicate this data and tell a story? So 3D has come a long way in the last 30 years. Back in the 1980s, movies like Tron gave us an idea of what's possible when you stitch together vectors one by one. which takes a long time. Today, 3D is being used systematically to modernize planning workflows, support scenario building in both private practice and within local government, fostering more open participation through visualization and better evaluation of proposed scenarios and a deeper understanding of implications over one design over another. For the comprehensive plan, clear communication is the objective. There are clear benefits of using a web-based 3D approach. 3D is integrated with ArcGIS Online, enabling you to create web scenes and web apps within a couple of minutes. And I'll actually demonstrate that a little later in the webinar live. You can share this vision and connect with your audience members at the end of the day. And across planning departments and private planning firms, we've noticed clear patterns emerge for leveraging 3D GIS. First and foremost, the ability to build and manage large 3D city models, high-resolution 3D city models that support more advanced analytics, such as shadow, solar exposure, view shed. Second is the ability to explore, design, evaluate plans in the context of the real environment. And finally, we see that sharing the vision and to engage with key stakeholders and the public for feedback is one of the largest use cases. These patterns do not relate to only desktop capability. As mentioned previously, we see hosted 3D layers on the web being leveraged ongoing. And we also see our emerging mobile and runtime SDKs supporting that mobile device as well. And as we at Esri continue development of this new technology, we are looking forward to supporting your key use cases, from BIM aggregation for that incredibly high level of detail basemap to community engagement through the integration with popular social media platforms such as Facebook. So whether you have a comprehensive plan coming up and you're looking to publish and tell the story, or you're undergoing zoning updates and look to display these transitions for community input, or you're simply looking to take 3D models and material from developers and redline this internally, we can help to support those initiatives. So during this webinar, we'll be featuring a series of survey questions as well, some polls. So when the time comes, an interactive question will appear on the screen, and I'll just ask Barbara if you could launch that first one. We'll actually tally the numbers in real time and come back to you with those results. So the first question, let's see, all right.
So we just want to get to know folks a little better.
Yep.
Wonder if they're using 3D.
Yep, are you currently using a 3D software?
Simple answers, yes or no. And it looks like we have, the winner is going to be yes.
All right.
At about 58%.
Great.
Good deal.
So our first speakers today are coming to us from Boulder, Colorado. And it's no secret that this is one of the most desirable places to live in the U.S. As a result of strong commitments to planning. Lesli Ellis is a comprehensive plan manager for the City of Boulder and leading the teams involved in the Boulder Valley Comprehensive Plan, which represents the partnership between the city and the county. Joining Lesli as well is Chris Trice. He's Information Resources Manager for the City of Boulder and presenting today on a long tradition of using GIS technology for comprehensive planning. And so I'll hand it over to you guys. Take it away.
Thanks, Brooks. This is Chris here, and joining me is Lesli, standing right beside me. So Boulder is located about 30 miles to the northwest of Denver, at the base of the Rocky Mountains. So a little bit about Boulder. Boulder has open space that surrounds most of the city, or almost the entire city. That's the slide up there, or the picture up at the top with the green. Open space is city-owned land that is set aside to preserve natural areas and also provides recreational opportunities for the residents of Boulder and visitors to the community. Boulder has an extensive bike system that allows folks to ride their bikes around and get around the city. Boulder is also home to the University of Colorado. And another kind of important piece about Boulder is due to the open space constraints, there's little vacant land that's available for development. So what we're seeing these days is mostly infill.
Okay, so as we undertake our comprehensive plan and face the challenges, many of which Brooks noted in his slide earlier, but our main issues here in Boulder are, as Chris mentioned, we have a strict outer edge. Our urban service limit, you can see in the map on the right, is basically defined just outside our city limits. And so we have quite an affordable housing challenge in Boulder that we'll be working on as part of the comp plan. And as we move forward, balancing the community character as we look at infill and redevelopment, along with many of our constraints. We have about a quarter to a third of our land is floodplain constrained in some ways. And so that makes climate adaptation and resilience planning all the more important as we move forward as part of a comprehensive plan. We also have a community that is highly engaged and has traditionally been very involved at live meetings and is increasingly becoming much more involved online and expecting to see more data and more information online.
Now we'll take a look at some of the mapping applications, both some of the ones that we've used in the past and kind of take a look at where we're trying to go in the future. What we're showing right now is an internal application that's used by our most city staff. Staff love it. It's quick. It gives them access to a lot of data. It's kind of a one-stop shop. As one of my coworkers said, it runs like a classic car, but parts are harder and harder to find. So we're looking to upgrade this one here very soon. Another application that we have used in the past is a JavaScript application for zoning. This was built on an older version of JavaScript, so it's not compatible with mobile devices. That's another one that we're going to look to upgrade here shortly. A newer one that we produced in the past year or so is an application that's used for development review. This was built with responsive design in mind. The application allows folks to get case information, meeting dates, links to case documents, as well as case pictures and kind of concept designs and that kind of information. And that's one of the ones that we also would like to move more into 3D and to show some kind of before and after proposed and existing developments. So as you know, for our base data for our 3D initiatives, we flew LiDAR in 2013. We had some very high resolution data, 16 to 24 points per square meter. This was a project between Public Works Utilities and our Open Space Department. Both departments had different goals for the project. Utilities wanted information for flood mapping, where Open Space was interested in information for data and canopy analysis, or vegetation and canopy analysis. The city, we hired a consultant to pull 3D buildings out of this information at a level of detail to provide that base information. In the picture right here, this is showing Chautauqua Dining Hall that was built in 1898, and below is what that looks like with our LiDAR data. And here is a shot of what our 3D buildings look like overlaid with Esri's topo or streets base map.
Okay, so that brings us to present day comprehensive plan update. And Boulder has quite a long legacy of doing comprehensive planning, actually dating back to earlier part of the century. But we have a comprehensive plan that the city and county have jointly adopted since 1977, and we update it every 5 years. We have quite a stack of paper plans, as you can see there. We do use our plan. While it is a binder plan, it tends to get a lot of use, and it's been increasingly online as well. in the next slide here. As Brooks said, we're, our plan is aimed at community values and vision. It is very broad. It encompasses our sustainability framework, so it covers multiple topics such as social equity and economic vitality, transportation. It's implemented in many ways through our budget, through our capital improvement program. A major component of it is the land use plan, and that's actually implemented through zoning. And so as we started this update last year, we were hearing a lot more information about the desire to make it much more integrated, online, three-dimensional. We wanted to leverage the work that had been done in our Information Resources Department and push that forward further to use as part of the plan. And you can see here in the next slide, what I'll do is jump you to our story maps. That's a work in progress and something we're very excited about. We've had very good feedback about. If you go to Boulder Valley Comprehensive.net webpage, there's a lot of information about the plan, and then the key resources and maps tab will take you to the interactive story maps. And it's best if you actually view these with Google Chrome if you're spending some time with them. And so what they do, if you're in the maps citywide, what this does is marry the data and information that we developed as part of a trends report and the background foundational information with the maps and data. And so when you first entered a story map, there's a little bit of a narrative, some photos and illustrations. You'll actually see a tab down arrow on the left, and so you can scroll down, and that will take you to each layer of maps. You can see now the new version of a land use map that used to be a two-dimensional land use map that now is incorporated with buildings and other information. And you also have the ability in these story maps to zoom in and zoom out, and so they're very interactive and dynamic. And I should say, too, we created these in ArcGIS online. We had support with Esri working with us, and we did a lot of the work in-house with support from Esri, and have, as I mentioned, have had some very good feedback. So you'll see in this map, you can start to see how the data is married with the maps on the left side. Some of the tabular data and information matches with what you're viewing on the right side. And again, you can scroll up and down and zoom in and out. For the sake of speed here, I didn't make these live, but if you actually go into them on the website, you can see that. So here's an example of future land use, zoning has all been incorporated into these maps. And we use these now as the backdrop for moving forward and having the conversations, as Brooke said, about where we want to be in the future as a community. Go ahead, next slide. You can see in this slide now it's starting to incorporate a bit more of the information about buildings and parks and other information about some of the lifestyle components of Boulder. And we've had a lot of interest from our Parks and Open Space Department about using this platform as a way of conveying information. Here's some of the natural systems information showing floodplains, wetlands, and other information that and oftentimes it is a bit of a development constraint for us, but also is important in terms of planning for natural systems. As Chris said, we have quite a robust transportation system, 204 miles of bike lanes, and 77% of our folks that live within quarter mile of transit, and these maps can start to convey that information in a very dynamic and interactive way. Okay, there's a slight delay between slides here. So a little bit more demographic information and information showing the density of population in different parts of the city. And you've probably all seen these types of maps before, but it's nice to be able to show it with the data right next to it and in a very interactive storytelling way. Same goes here for household density, housing density per acre. And then when we first started the comprehensive plan, we heard a lot of desire to not only make the maps very data rich and a way to help present information about Boulder as a whole, but also in a way to show the finer grained nuances and differences in parts of the community. So we created a set of story maps for what we call subcommunities or planning areas within the community. We have a set of PDF paper brochures that we've used for meetings. They're also available online, and then we translated these paper versions into what now exists as story maps online for each of the subcommunities. This is what the subcommunity map for Central Area looks like in the paper version, and then it was translated as were the citywide maps into the story map platform, so that you can read a bit more about it, see some information, and dive in. So there's just a couple images here of what those look like at that level as well. And we found that folks in neighborhoods have found this very useful to get a bit more information about what's near them and around them in the context. Go ahead. And then these maps show you just, the ability to zoom in a bit more. You can zoom all the way down to the street level. Our buildings and information are not fully mapped out with the detail that some communities have yet. That's something we'll aspire to, but at least we have the buildings all incorporated in. You can also change the background and the base map views. In this case, we're showing the imagery in the background, but you can select different ways of looking at the information. You can also use a slider bar to look at shade and shadows within the buildings as well. And so we found that to be a useful tool. And our development review team is working toward aiming to start to use these tools for development review purposes. So where we're headed within our, we're about 2/3 of the way through the comprehensive plan process, and we've also been working to create maps of zoning potential and city engine, and starting to look at 3D scenarios as part of the comprehensive plan. So that's our next step. We've built the model based on our zoning rules, and we're headed toward testing different outcomes, particularly around questions about where can we accommodate housing within our community and within existing constraints.
Thanks, Leslie. Yeah, this kind of helps us answer these what-if scenarios, or what would this look like in a much easier way. We get those questions quite a bit, and this will be a valuable tool to help us. So what we'd also like to do is improve the way that we present the comp plan, as Brooks alluded to earlier. Having paper versions or PDFs, just sometimes the information is there, but it's hard to access it. So we're looking to create a living document that can be more easily updated, not just on the regular basis that we update the comp plan. We'd like to make it easier, more searchable, add some videos into it, and then in this version of the comp plan update, we've included metrics that we're going to tie into our citywide dashboard project that we're getting ready to launch here shortly.
And I'll just add very quickly to all the 3D maps that we've been working will continue to use as part of the comprehensive plan, and as we adapt the land use map to show changes based on results of scenarios, those will be incorporated in as part of the plan.
Great point. Another thing that we did with this update to the comp plan was use a story map for land use change requests. This presented information, a lot of information to the public. Also provided pictures so people could get a better idea of what the areas looked like. And this also provided, in a sense, a virtual tour, so city staff wouldn't have to go out and do a physical tour with the board members that were making the decisions. So Mojo's asking, where do we go from here? What we'd like to do is incorporate 3D for more projects in other departments. In order to do this, we're going to have to, have some additional training for staff using ArcGIS Pro and City Engine. We'd like to continue to integrate City Engine for planning decisions. We're also looking at incorporating more story maps, both 2D and 3D, to try to better tell the story of what we do in local government. Just show people, what our day-to-day is and some of the projects that we're working on. And then also continue to migrate old applications to 3D and 2D if we need to do that. And that also includes that 3D development review site that we talked about before. And that's all from us. Back to you, Brooks.
Thank you very much, Chris and Leslie. It's amazing work so far, and I look forward to seeing more come out the next year. So to summarize this really amazing work into the essential components for you guys on the webinar to start leveraging in your work, it starts with apps, providing access to information and capabilities from any device, anywhere, anytime. Through the web browser is obviously the most popular. Web maps and web scenes are what feed these apps, and they are, giving you the ability to aggregate and visualize information to support decision making, but also for that community input. And identity, giving every person internally throughout multiple departments access to the system, access to the data that's being published, and access to the tools so they can go in and create their own applications as well. So before moving on, I'll actually pose one more poll just to get a feel for the audience here today. All right, so do you see your organization leveraging Web 3D GIS and story maps to tell your story?
Well, wow. I don't see this happen very often. We are at 88% yes.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, so just so everyone can see that graph, that's 88% yes. Well, who could blame them? Who doesn't love a story map? They're awesome.
Absolutely. Thank you. So moving on, effective planning begins with a well-designed base map. And these come in many different resolutions for different purposes. The mesh shown here on the far left is what you'd usually associate with zooming around in Google Earth, providing a highly detailed 3D surface with imagery, but not so smart because you can't very easily query this and start to actually work with it cartographically. In the middle image here, we see a combination of photogrammetry with object-based 3D, where the buildings and the trees have attributes, and these can start to be cartographically rendered. This type of object-based model can support many traditional 2D applications, like addressing seen here on the far right, and don't necessarily need to be photorealistic, similar to how we don't always use imagery as our only base map in 2D mapping. In 3D, it's the same way. And we can start to integrate all different types of data sources into actually creating this 3D base map. So let's go ahead and dive into a couple more great examples from around the world, hitting on some of these key use cases that we've discussed so far, from development review to zoning, to land use planning, to community engagement. And so what I will do is switch over here to the web browser. All right. So I'm going to show you a couple of examples, 3 in particular, coming from Boston, from Portland, from Los Angeles, some great cities here in the U.S. This is a great example coming from Boston of how critical it is to make concepts like zoning very clear to the community. So this story map actually explores South Boston's H150 and breaks down this complex code so that the public can understand it and discuss what the community thinks good changes should be. So the zoning codes are intended to be helpful and beneficial to the public to essentially prevent overcrowding and to preserve land values. This example dives into that one special district, H150. It's a height-limited district, so that's where the 50 comes from, and a 1 floor area ratio. So taking a look at the dimensional requirements, every district has requirements pertaining to size of the lot, minimum, maximums, a table of the requirements really. Many of the form factors in the district we're taking a look at here relate to predominantly row house typology. If you're proposing development and it does not meet these dimensional requirements, you need to go get a variance through the city. So now additionally to the table, there are usually footnotes. It's not always simple. For example, sometimes the constraints depend on the building that you want to put there. This map takes a look at one of these footnotes that says, 2,000 square foot minimum lot size is needed for 1- and 2-family row houses. And as you can see, many of these properties that don't meet that requirement are shown here in red. Even if we switch now and take a look at usage greater than 5,000 square feet for development not as row houses, many of the properties also don't conform. Additionally, we can take a look at setbacks, which are usually for the front, side, rear of the lot. In Boston in particular, they have a concept called a modal setback. This means that if most of the existing houses are not far from the property line, they don't penalize new development and make them stick to the one regulation. We take a measurement of each of the setbacks on the block and provide an average of those setbacks to inform how development should adhere to that particular block setback. So now in Boston they have bay windows, as you can see, and they're not included in that measurement. So if we go ahead and peel back the roof of these lots, you can see that they're setback catchment areas. So the corner lots are not necessarily counted. Knowing now what the front setbacks are and the max heights, we can move to the rear and side setbacks. And I'll switch here to this view. Now in this view we can see if we implement the side setbacks, we don't entirely get a realistic outcome because most of the buildings are actually row homes and they actually have a common wall. Let's see if it loads properly. Maybe too many items open in the browser. But if they were enforced, you'd see that we wouldn't have many building volumes at all in this part of the city. By just implementing the front and rear setbacks, we can see a much better idea of the current envelope and what that would be throughout that particular area. Now, by combining the written codes with the visualization, we can start to have that conversation about what, as a community, we want, right? And do we want to be able to build higher than 50 feet? I mean, we can start to explore those changes and what they might look like throughout the city. The second example that I wanted to show you today and really show off is the great work coming out of Portland. They've actually created a custom JavaScript map app. The app itself gives access to many of the different themes within their comprehensive plan update. So if I wanted to, I could actually dive into the central city and explore it a bit more. So this app actually increased participation in the comprehensive plan process by about tenfold. They were able to get actually more diverse feedback than just the evening meetings where folks might not necessarily be able to show up. I guess if I was a community member, I would be able to zoom down to my house right here on the corner. And I would be able to click on and learn a little bit more about what EX means, right? EX means central employment. As a zone, it's a little bit more abstracted as EX. So I actually get to go in and learn a little bit more about the facts associated with that. And if I went into the comments, I can provide a comment that's part of public testimony. So we see this as a method of reaching out to the community. And so far they've received over 5,000 comments since releasing this, really targeting that upcoming generation that we're all deeply interested in getting our message out to. And the final example before I move on to our second speaker today is really this idea of continuous improvement of the comprehensive plan, a living document where citizens can see on-the-ground improvement. And the best case of this comes from the Clean Streets Index that is right here in LA, where Clean Streets is actually part of Mayor Eric Garcetti's initiative. The city's Bureau of Sanitation actually drove all of the streets in LA. It's about 22,000 miles, and gave each block a cleanliness score from 1 to 3. And each street score is based on 4 factors: litter, weeds, bulky items, illegal dumping, and this assessment is actually going to be repeated every year. So Los Angeles is really leading the way as really one of the only big cities in the U.S. conducting a regular cleanliness assessment of every city street. And we can even start to look at streets versus, for instance, all of the educational facilities throughout the city and start to prioritize efforts going forward. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to our second guest today. Eric Brady is actually going to dive a little bit deeper into the tools that have led his firm to implement some of the largest 3D models and regional 3D models that we've seen, supporting anything from zoning to development review to regional planning, just to name a few. So over to you, Eric.
Okay, thanks, Brooks. Can everybody hear me?
Yep.
So Bergman Associates, we're an architecture, engineering, and planning firm, and we have a long tradition using 3D technologies in our practice. So the architects are rendering out beautiful buildings with 3D, our engineers design bridges, highways, and dams with 3D, and our planning work uses 3D visualization as well. And so these visualizations for planning have proven to be very effective. So you can see here one of our visualizations where it really helps portray that community's vision for growth. But as beautiful as it is, there are some limitations. In this model, there's no data behind the buildings, and it's compiled as a simulation, so it really just captures one moment in time, one version of the plan. And it's also developed with sophisticated graphic art tools, so it's not easily modified using traditional planning tools. And planning offices generally don't have those capabilities. So we started to ask ourselves, well, what about GIS? GIS data was always an input to these graphics with the elevation models, parcels, building footprints, tree points, and zoning as inputs. And we knew that our customers had GIS skill sets as well to help manage these scenes. And we started looking at why don't we just use GIS exclusively. So years ago we started with ArcGlobe, and what you're seeing here is one of our earliest models of a university campus, and it proved very effective as a visualization tool. Then CityEngine was released, and that really became a powerful tool to integrate lots of data and to publish easy-to-use web scenes. And now ArcGIS Pro is proving to be a very powerful desktop 3D tool. So one of our earliest examples of 3D GIS was with the City of Rochester. And here we are looking at a CityEngine web scene, and this is a rich model that was used to support the city's master plan update. The web-based GIS allows the city to share the plan with stakeholders, giving the public an understanding of how the existing built environment could be affected by the plan update. CityEngine's parametric modeling tools allowed us to develop representative models to convey the form-based zoning code. And the models were intended to show the types of infill development that were supported by the zoning code, both in size and density, but also architectural features like window coverage, setback, and facade material to help people understand what kind of buildings would be in their neighborhood potentially. Another powerful use case for the base map from this project was the idea of site plan review. So here we're looking at a new bus station that was constructed in the city, and by taking the architect's BIM model, the city was able to integrate the model into the base map for stakeholder review. And this allowed the public and decision makers to really understand the visual impacts of this proposed construction. So these CityEngine web scenes really prove the viability of a 3D GIS base map for visualization, but as GISers we really were interested in the data as well. So for our next project we really wanted to create an intelligent 3D base map to support planning analysis. And here Esri was really helpful in providing a framework for a 3D planning information model. And this is really a flexible geodatabase design that allows users to join any number of data to their building models. So of course we have our multi-patch models, whether they be simple massings or very detailed textured models. We have traditional planning vector data like zoning and land use parcel information, but we can also join standalone tables with relational data that might support our building and analysis. All of this information is joined to the building footprint in the map and then associated to the model. So we were able to prove this out with a project we conducted with the City of Charlotte, North Carolina. And here we're looking at a web scene published from ArcGIS Pro, and these cyber city models have been joined and visualized, symbolized by one of the many attributes associated with them. And here we're showing square footage. And this is, because we have attributes, we can do things like link a hyperlink out to the county's real property website. We can bring in our vector planning data as well to help understand and do some really interesting visualization and analysis. But because this information model is flexible, richly detailed and textured models could also be added into the geodatabase, and here we see them streaming in. So they can support use cases where accurate looking models are also needed. So for us, the Charlotte project really showed the value and viability of leveraging traditional GIS data within the base map and joining it to the base map for use in planning analysis. And now our current project is with the Cape Cod Commission in Massachusetts, and what we're doing here is looking how we can use ArcGIS Pro, intelligent data, and 3D planning tools to support common planning functions. This is a really great project. It's got an aggressive schedule that we're right in the middle of, and I can't say enough of what a great partner the Commission GIS folks have been in helping with this project and moving it towards success. But the project goals are pretty straightforward. The goal is to develop a 3D GIS framework to further regional initiatives as a strategy to educate the county constituents concerning land use choices, density, building form, and wastewater treatment efficiency. So what we're doing in the project is we're first creating a 3D base map of the entire Cape. It's over 260,000 structures. The majority of these models will be created with City Engine's parametric rules, but there are specific project areas that have been modeled out by a vendor, PLW ModelWorks, one of our partners. And these models are then joined with rich attribution, and some of this is used to assign baseline impacts for every structure, understanding the parking, water use, population, and job impacts. We're creating zoning envelopes similar to what you saw in Brooke's example, and then we're implementing a new tool we're finalizing called Impact 3D. So to give you a little sense of the scale of the project, we're going to fly over part of the Cape here. We're using ArcPro's animation tool, made it very easy, and we can see below us as we slowly stream over the area here in the Cape our parametric models. We call these monopoly houses, and these models really are not meant to be hyper-realistic. They're created with the City Engine rule package that extracts the building footprint to a height, and now here we see the PLW models with a little bit more accurate architectural features. And this is Hyannis in the Cape. And now we'll zoom into one of our parametric models again, and here we can see the rich attributes that have been assigned to them as we identify in ArcPro. So there's impact, build-out impact variables here we see, and these are assigned to every structure, and then we have all of these additional attributes that have been joined through those spatial and attributional relationships. So Impact 3D is a ArcPro add-in that we've developed and we're just finalizing, and it really supports interactive 3D scenario building to visualize and understand the build-out impacts of potential development in the community. This tool will be on the Esri marketplace. We're really excited about this in June, and we do have a beta program, and if you're interested, we'd love to work with you and see if we can't get you stood up with a test license. So let's talk about what the tool can do and how the Cape Cod Commission will use it. So in this example movie here, we have an infill parcel that we want to understand the impacts, what the impacts might be. So what we're first going to do is we're going to visualize the zoning constraints. Then we're going to open up our massing tool from Impact 3D. The first step in developing scenario building is to trace a building footprint. And here we want to make sure we're inside the setback limits. Our next step is to define the size and type of building here. So we're going to dictate the number of stories, the floor height, and some texturing attributes. We have a whole library of different facade types, but here we're just using a suggestive facade to represent window coverage and really just give a representative view of what a building might look like on this site. And this again is sort of that fundamental visualization capability that we've talked about and we've seen so much. But really we want to understand the impacts of this building. So here we're going to pick from a list of different space use types. And in this scenario we're going to look at a mixed-use hotel and restaurant. So we'll assign those use types by their space percentage. And then below we can see some of those impacts. We know the building square footage, floor area ratio, parking spaces, building coverage on the lot, and then peak traffic, parked cars, jobs, and daily water use for this scenario building. And so you probably ask, well, where are you getting that data? Well, the tool is very flexible and it allows users to define these different uses. We start with ITE-based impacts, but users can come in and add their own type of use, space use. So here let's put in a scenario, transit-oriented development restaurant, where we'll have, we expect fewer trips and fewer parked cars. Each column here represents an impact that we can analyze, and these columns are fully configurable as well. So depending on your own analysis needs, you could add that column in and the expected impacts based on a square footage. So we'll go back here and look at our massing again, and this time we're going to assign, we're going to remove that original restaurant and add our TOD restaurant, and we can see that the parking and traffic impacts have been reduced. And we'll save that data to the layer. And so while we understand the impacts for this initial building, what we want to understand is, well, what's the impact of this one scenario with the surrounding area, with the existing baseline impacts that we've calculated into the data model. So every building has its own impact. And here the companion tool on the impact reports allows us to see the existing and proposed impacts from these selected buildings. But for this scenario, we're actually looking at a corridor, and we see it here as a buffered area. And you see we have a whole set of infill buildings that we've assigned different use types based on our expected development scenario. We'll use the ArcPro's geoprocessing tool to quickly select those, and then the Impact 3D reporting tool again will allow us to see what those impacts are, both existing and proposed. We can also then look and scale out across a larger geography. While we may have a small planning area, we may want to look regionally and see what impacts are on the baseline as well as proposed. So here we're just making a quick selection on the map, but that selection can be driven by traditional spatial location, whether it be a watershed or a jurisdictional district. And the graphs and impact values are all, again, configured and can be shown based on your planning needs. So of course, plans are great, but we really want to find and see them implemented. So ArcPro allows us to import third-party data models. So in this pretend scenario here, we have a developer's 4-story mixed-use building on that same site with the basic site plan. And here we can bring it into the base map and understand visually how it looks. And we can also, of course, test how it fits within that zoning envelope. Maybe they'll need a small variance for that roof component, but it interacts and plays with all the existing data in the base map. And of course, once this building is built, the model becomes part of the base map itself, and it can be attributed with its own impacts and its own data to help support continued growth and continued use of the tools as plans develop. So we've been working with 3D GIS for a long time, and hopefully give you a sense of how we've evolved here, but we really are now seeing the 3D base map as a powerful and valuable tool for planners. One of the keys is this is really a living dynamic plan. You know, unlike those paper documents or those compiled visualizations, the 3D base map grows and can be modified and evolve as plans are implemented. These data can be managed with ArcGIS skill sets, and we know many planning offices have that expertise. And as you saw with the data model, we can leverage and integrate much of the existing data that's already available and already being used in your common planning practices. And then as Boulder showed in their great examples, all of this data can be easily shared out with some great information products. The second great thing we see here is ArcGIS Pro really showing itself to be a great tool and a single point of access to get at this data and to get at the functionality. It supports visualization of the built environment. We can create very flexible and dynamic data-driven 3D models, and we can support all kinds of analysis from the built-in geoprocessing tools to add-ins like Impact 3D. So we're really excited to see this capability grow, and it's great to see so many planning offices getting into 3D GIS. We think it's the wave of the future here.
Thank you very much, Eric. And before moving on, we'd like to know your thoughts as well, all you guys on the line. So if you wouldn't mind, Barbary, launch the next poll. Do you have the data expertise and resources to solve a problem for your organization using 3D GIS? And we've seen a lot of examples here today. And really we're curious if you have a project that you're currently working on that is 3D, that leverages GIS, whether you have data and resources but no right expertise that you're still learning, or you have expertise and no resources but no data, or none of the above and you know how to get started. So it'd be great to hear from you.
Yeah, so folks are clicking their choices quickly, and I'll say it seems like we have the right people in the room. It looks like a number of folks are already have some projects going on, and some others looking to get started. So I'll just share these results with you here real quickly. We have a tie for the first two at 29%. So folks looking for some more expertise for their mid-project. And coming in next is they want to know how to get started. So certainly in the right place for that.
Great.
So Brooks, we'll let you continue and share that.
Sure. With the remainder of the time we have, what I'll do is I'll just take you through how to get started and show you a little bit of a demonstration of some of these key tools that we've been talking about. So we've talked about some major themes that are taking 3D GIS into the city, and really now we'll focus on the actual products. ArcGIS supports the enterprise, as you know, and your business objectives at the end of the day. And with the platform approach, we're really focused on overall project outcomes and reducing operational costs and really improving the production, the results. So ArcGIS powers some really amazing applications for a range of different users. Tools like Geoplanner for browser-based, scenario-based planning and evaluation. ArcGIS Pro for maintaining large 3D city models and performing geoprocessing analysis. And CityEngine for focused urban design applications, as well as writing rules that can now be used within the platform. And not only do we have these tools that do the back office work, but more importantly, the ability to publish and share this information. With web scenes, we can start to compile interactive views, like you've seen in many of the examples today, and create web apps and story maps that tell those stories. So we have the complete workflow for not only creating and managing 3D data, but also serving it out. And for those developers on the call as well, we have the ArcGIS JavaScript API 4.0 that just got released with 3D capability, and the ArcGIS Runtime SDK as well. So you don't need to be a 3D expert to use 3D. 3D is for everyone. And while there are professionals like Eric Brady here today that use ArcGIS Pro and CityEngine for their advanced 3D design workflows, there are also subject matter experts that can access this type of data within the web browser and create web scenes, create web apps without any coding, and leverage the same data within browser-based tools like Geoplanner for common land planning scenario workflows. Then there are the public users, or rather the consumers of content made publicly available through anonymous access or through social media login. And how this all works looks something like this. It's really a process of integrating a lot of the data across departments, whether it is already GIS data on our ArcGIS or BIM, SketchUp, CAD data. And we can start to bring that data up into the cloud as individual layers, mash it together with Esri content, which is your global imagery, all your base maps, as well as now a global terrain service, a 3D terrain service, in addition to demographics, weather, real-time traffic, you name it. And so we can start to compile 2D and 3D information products that hit your particular initiatives and use cases. So with that, I'm going to jump over to a quick demonstration. I know that we don't have much time left, but I thought I'd give you a little idea of some of these tools. So what I'll do is I'll actually demonstrate Geoplanner, which you see up here on the screen, jump into CityEngine 2016 to give you a little bit of a sneak peek into the new features there, and then dive over to 3D web apps. And I'm actually going to build one really quick and show you how easy it is to actually do that. So Geoplanner is where we'll start. This is actually Geoplanner. When you log in under your particular user identity, you get prompted with your projects, and your projects can be saved and you can add other users to your projects, and it's a great way to actually manage those scenario conceptual projects here. So this is actually an example over in Valley Metro, the transit authority there, and for this example we're taking a look at bus rapid transit lines and the park and ride stations that serve them. And so for park and ride stations, we're actually interested in a couple of variables when we go in to plan those. One of those variables would obviously be population and the driving times from the existing park and rides. And being able to take those different metrics like population densities and work with them in what we call weighted raster overlays is what Geoplanner does really well. So we can start to take that total population and create a density map that allows us to take a look at not only total population but other densities such as population below poverty, travel times from existing park and rides, giving us a manageable way to conduct a suitability study, which combined would allow us to see no-go or good-to-go areas throughout the city. So the modeler in Geoplanner allows us to do all that on the fly. So we can go ahead and start to prioritize certain layers over another. So if we wanted to prioritize, for instance, travel time to existing park and rides, then we could do that and just save the model, and it reruns on the fly and gives us that suitability surface. And for travel time, we're not trying to place new park and rides next to existing ones, so this is key. So next we can move over to the Design tab, and we can actually start to place our proposed park and rides. We can zoom in to certain areas, actually turn on the imagery base map to get a better idea of where these particular sites could be. And there are some empty sites here, so we'll place one there. And if we turn back on the suitability model, maybe one down here towards the bottom of the green area here. So we've placed two park and rides, and now that we've done that, we can start to analyze those further. If I move already to the evaluate stage, we can start to see side by side different scenarios presented against each other. So let's go ahead and put scenario B on the left and the present condition, scenario A, on the right. And so by doing this, we can very quickly start to cycle through our scenarios, which are managed right here in Geoplanner. You can actually duplicate existing ones, which is useful in that you want to actually preserve the baseline and then design further, or actually take an existing scenario like you see here and further that design. We also have design time charting, which allows us to start assessing our designs. So let's look at, for instance, the population below poverty within a 5-minute driving time of a park and ride. So just by adding 6 more park and rides here, we've upped the number of folks accessible to those park and ride stations by almost 100,000. We can also start to look at, for instance, the share of Maricopa County population that is represented there by that metric. And so these are completely customizable, and you can actually build these charts rather easily with your own actual equation here. So that's a regional example, and that utilizes the weighted raster overlay. I'd like to move over to another one that's a little bit more at home with comprehensive planning. This is actually the general plan for Redlands. And we can start to add data. So let's, for instance, look at park data. You can also search the entire ArcGIS Online database and find any data that you would want to be able to work with. If I was to take those parks, we can also do analysis right here in the browser, such as patterns, proximity. We can do drive times, walk distances, or create buffers. And we can select our parks, for instance, create buffers of 1, 2, 3 miles, and start to actually piece together an understanding of the existing conditions ahead of our interventions. In this case, we're looking at park distance to parks while we're going in and conducting our land use transitions. So if we actually dive into, for instance, a parcel or set of parcels up here to the north of the city, we can actually turn on our imagery base map and start to look at changing some of this land use. If we go to the Design tab, in addition to actually sketching, which allows us to just very quickly do some bubble diagrams, we can actually paint, which is this little icon here. And so this actually allows us to take that light industrial, for instance, and the first task is to update it, for instance, to public. So we can start to change that from industrial to public because we know that's a school, and the imagery is a whole lot more recent than the work being done on the parcel level. And we can start to save that area there, for instance, for parks and the future expansion of the school. We can start to save that, create a new scenario, and work with that as the existing conditions. These charts are actually responsive while I'm designing as well. So if I want to, I can actually look at one of our key metrics that are part of our comprehensive plan, or general plan in this case, update, which might be multifamily units. This is actually looking at what multifamily units are within my window here. We can actually switch it to all features as well. So we have a complete view of total multifamily dwelling. But since these parcels are live data sets, if I select one, I can actually pull up all the attributes. As I'm drawing with, say, medium density residential now, as I change it, the charts are going to automatically update. And since my target is here shown in the yellow arrow, I can start to change these parcels and start to very easily get to that target while exploring the possibility for, say, preservation of different land. So Geoplanner offers that unique ability to take existing data, connect it to your database, and allow that scenario building. And again, side by side, we can start to take a look at, again, let's see, scenario A, which is current conditions, and scenario B, which is one of our changes. And again, compare before and after with those different scenarios in real time. So this offers the ability to really look at it at a public meeting, get feedback, make changes on the fly, and really have that flexible environment to make those changes and start to explore the changes. So before moving on to the next web example, I want to head over to CityEngine. So CityEngine is getting a major update this year. CityEngine 2016 is coming out towards the Esri UC, which is on June 24th. Esri CityEngine is now being linked into the web GIS platform. I can actually log in to Esri CityEngine here with my ArcGIS Online account, and I actually have access to all of my data, all of my groups on my ArcGIS Online. And so what I can begin to do is start to bring in that same data, for instance, that was used in Geoplanner. So let's bring in, for instance, some development potential. So these are some block level parcels that have, let's say different attributes that have FAR values as well as max heights and so forth. Everyone on the call today that knows CityEngine knows that you can take this type of data and actually use a rule to start driving the visualization of that data. You can see one here has been actually changed a little bit too high. But it allows us to take that data that's hosted on the cloud, apply rules, and start to visualize that. But I can do it in white space, but that's not the real power of CityEngine. And with the new release of CityEngine 2016, we now have the ability to get map data. This is actually a feature that allows us to search anywhere in the world and allows us to draw an area of interest and actually pull that either base maps or imagery data or terrain data right into CityEngine. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK. I'm actually grabbing the satellite data and the terrain data that we're hosting on ArcGIS Online as part of the Esri services. And it should come right in. Actually, you don't have to worry about the coordinate systems as well. We actually have this one set at State Plane 6, which is San Diego, and it automatically will put that imagery in the right format. So when it comes to actually visualizing the results of some of your designs with CityEngine rules, it's becoming a lot easier, and we can start to project those, for instance, to our new terrain. And we can also bring in data like Eric mentioned from, for instance, our geodatabase. We can also bring in PLW, ModelWorks buildings, or any other existing 3D content to actually enrich our overall base map. So it's pretty quick to now mock up one of these scenes, and now what we can do is start to select this and export it back out. So with the new CityEngine 2016, we'll be handling the new hosted 3D scene format. That will actually allow you to, similar to the older CityEngine web scene, create these 3D layers that we can start to bring into the browser. So once you export as that 3D format, we can start to take our otherwise two-dimensional web maps. This is a great example, for instance, of a zoning layer on a 2D web map. We can start to mash those up with our 3D layers within a web scene. Web scenes are similar to web maps. They offer layer control. They offer you the ability to switch base maps. And they offer you the ability to use the data that you already have. So this is actually some two-dimensional data, and we can easily use CityEngine rules to pop up buildings, use photogrammetric buildings from PLW to actually get to that next level of resolution. And this is object-based 3D. And you can see the actual 3D layer format that we're using here, the scene service, similar to a feature service, but it's a 3D format, actually caches itself on the server. So if I zoom back out and zoom back in, you'll see it all optimized on the fly. So you can actually drop in not only very detailed buildings for your base map, but also for review purposes of maybe a new development. So this is a great base map. Coming out, though, later this year is actually the mesh-based base map. So we have a nice partnership with Acute 3D, which now the context capture actually exports to our 3D web-hosted format. So for those of you on the webinar that are interested in that Google Earth type mesh that will let you zoom in and count the number of cars at that one particular time in a parking lot, you'll actually have that capability as well. By using context capture, you can already do it today. We're also actually releasing an app at the UC called Drone to Map. So if you don't have an airplane that will fly cities at this resolution, you can use your own drone. And from experience, it's very easy to go use Drone to Map and actually create one of these nice outputs as well. So we look forward to utilizing this type of base map further as it really gives us that really high definition situational awareness throughout the city. And before moving on, I just want to show you how easy it is to actually create one of these scenes. If you go to Web Scene up at the top of your ArcGIS Online, you actually have the ability to add in your own layers. I can actually type in a little tag here, add in my 3D buildings for San Diego, switch my imagery, and boom. So I have my base map. And I can start to overlay points. I can start to bring in layers like development review, and I can start to, for instance, change transparency, work with pop-ups or no pop-ups, legend, recolor that if I want to. I can also start to set slides that actually allow me to very quickly navigate throughout the scene and maybe show off different areas of the city in this case, which would be ripe for redevelopment. And once I'm done, I save the scene. I call it, let's call it Directions Mag. And that actually saves directly in my ArcGIS Online 2016. There we go. So once we've saved it, back at your ArcGIS Online, you can actually create web apps using templates like story map templates or Web App Builder. Web App Builder, if you're using it in 2D, it actually has 3D capabilities as well already. So we'll go ahead and create one of those. And using Web App Builder, it allows us to take our default scene viewer and allows us to actually build out a customized branded application. So here, it's going to open up our little configurator. I can go to my map, choose the web scene. In this case, I'm going to say directions mag, grab that, and I can start to choose my theme. Maybe I want a black theme, a little pull-out that shows slides. For this, let's go ahead and use the foldable theme, and I can start to, for instance, add my own logo, Esri, and my own widgets. And these widgets are going to be built out even further. We can actually add splash screens that allow you to say, welcome to your web map. So building these web apps is quite easy. I save it. Now I can go launch it. I can go embed this on websites. I can send it to a client if I'm getting a project reviewed. So in a couple of seconds, I mean, I know we're running out of time, but you can see how easy it is to actually create one of these. So getting back, so in summary, how do you get started? First, you have to build out your 3D base map, and this is becoming easier and easier with many different data sources, and it's a matter of bringing together relevant information from a variety of sources. And second, democratize 3D capability within your planning process as it is today. Utilize both desktop applications like CityEngine, ArcGIS Pro, and also web-based tools like Geoplanner, which we previewed here today. And finally, use web apps to tell simple, relevant stories. These can be made quickly, and they can be integrated with existing web pages and other PR outlets that are currently being used. And with that, we're going to open it up for questions. We'll have a couple of questions. We have a little bit of time left. If we don't get to your questions, we'll actually follow up after the webinar as well. So still submit them if you have any questions. If you want to go ahead and schedule a meeting at the Esri UC, we have a whole team ready to actually meet with you and talk through some of your projects. Go ahead and use that bit.ly, which will drop you into a doodle so you can pick a meeting time during the UC week, which is coming up at the end of June. So we look forward to seeing a lot of you guys there.
Awesome. So I think one thing that maybe, aside from the oohs and ahs, Brooks, folks maybe want to learn more about, are there CityEngine or Geoplanner training materials available for folks if they're wanting to learn more?
So we have a resource center for both CityEngine and Geoplanner that offer free training, both video-based training but also written training. They both have extensive help documentation as well. With CityEngine, if you're interested in, for instance, getting started with writing some CityEngine rules, there's the great help documentation there that will actually take you through many of the operations of these rules. When it comes to training, I would check YouTube and simply Google Geoplanner training. We'll actually send out a couple of links to some training resources to everyone on the webinar today, so we make sure to have everyone have good access to those for sure.
Okay. And did you want to share with folks about, I think we maybe have one more poll here in our cadre of goodies for some folks requesting some consulting?
Sure. Yeah. So I guess one more poll here. Yeah. There you go. Yeah. For those interested, we definitely offer the chance to connect virtually over the web. So feel free to sign up there. We'll reach out to you and we can talk through some of your projects as well if you'd be interested.
So we'll hop over to Boulder for a second. Lesli and Chris, what kind of reports are you using in CityEngine to access those zoning changes?
Well, you know, right now we're kind of still working on integrating it and getting people trained up, so we haven't utilized the reporting functionality as much as we'd like. So it's kind of not there yet, but we're moving in that direction.
Do you have a sense of how many views you've had on your story maps?
We do. The citywide story map's been live for a couple of months, and at this point we've had about 900 views. So not quantitatively a high number, but we've gotten a lot of great feedback from the people that are using them. We really haven't done a lot to advertise that they're available. We probably need to do more.
I'm guessing after today you'll have a lot more interest.
Yep.
Eric, a question for you in regards to timeline. What's the timeline like for a 3D project like the Cape Cod Commission?
Well, you know, it's really a project where we have a partner who's giving us data that's very well organized, so we've been able to quickly develop that 3D base map and implement the tool. So, you know, within a month or two, with this very aggressive project, we'll be standing up the base map and the tools and have them off and running.
Terrific. And Brooks, back to you. Can you use I think that we talked about this, but just to reiterate for the folks that are asking, can they use their existing 3D models inside of ArcGIS Pro and City Engine, and do they need to be in a specific format?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think Eric demonstrated this, but we handle almost all formats that are popularly used with 3D, including Collada, OBJ. If you include KML in there, you'd have your geographic location as well. Otherwise, the formats used in Pro and in City Engine the most probably multi-patch, and that allows us to keep it in a database format as well. And
Great.
actually, I see a question here as well. What platform will I need to load 2016 City Engine? Well, City Engine 2016 is not yet released, but when it does, it should handle all of the platforms that are currently leveraged with 2015, which includes iOS and Linux as well as Windows. In terms of the computer, you'd probably want to stick to around an 8 gigabyte processor with a pretty robust graphics card. NVIDIA is a great set of graphics cards for City Engine work.
I bet. Brooks, do you have maybe, are there a couple of other questions, and maybe we could squeeze in one more before we go?
Sure. Let's see. I'm looking here. Maybe you'll go through this, but a new version of City Engine, will it enable fly-throughs? What you can do in City Engine is actually set some bookmarks, and those bookmarks can be used to fly through in City Engine. However, for fly-throughs, that's really the production work of when you're working in 3D, and that's where we would use our web scenes, for instance, to format bookmarks to fly through in a web scene. Or in ArcGIS Pro, we've actually just added in animation tools that actually allow you to animate through bookmarks, actually have your path as if you're tracking a path of an airplane. You can track the path of your camera through the 3D scene. So if you're interested in animations, I would try out ArcGIS Pro for that. The same data comes in ArcGIS Pro that comes into City Engine. And most of the folks that use City Engine actually work with tools that are like Autodesk Maya or Cinema 4D that allow you that really robust ability to render light throughout the model.
Terrific. Well, folks, we are out of time. So much good stuff and so little time. So we really appreciate you sticking with us today for our extended session. Remember that you are going to get an email from us here at Directions, so keep an eye on your inbox. We'll have a link to the recording as well as some pertinent information so you can get in touch with the fine folks presenting today. If you're interested in credits, we'll give you that information to request a certificate, and we appreciate your information on the survey on the way out. Brooks, Leslie, Chris, Eric, terrific job. We really appreciate you being with us, sharing your expertise and amazing case studies. And thanks always to Esri for sponsoring today's webinar. We hope you'll join us again for the next webinar. Check out our archives as well. There are some other good Esri 3D things to check out. Have a great day, and be sure and tell a friend about Directions Magazine. Bye, everybody.